Moo. Good morning, Danny. Fit life with first blood. Good morning. I see the Fit Life with Danny GCM with us. FTP, good morning, Patriots. And I see Pitt Danny's joined us as well. Pitt Danny, answer me this. Are we doing the meeting at Amici's Thursday? Because I didn't see anything about it on the Facebook page, but it should be the monthly meeting on this Thursday, I think. So, Let me know that in the chat there. I see Megan Wilbanks join us. Good morning, sunshine. And there's Stryker, my man. All right. So here's what I want to talk about. Yesterday, I threw you a little teaser at the end of the show. I'm doing kind of a two-parter. And today, I'm going to start that two-parter. We're going to talk about the trend of ChatGPT, the general artificial intelligence chatbots, and some of the stuff that's been going on with them. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on ChatGPT itself and this article from the AP about some of the based alternatives. But then I want to talk a little bit about what metrics we get from that might give us kind of an eye into the future. Tomorrow morning, continuing this, we're going to kind of link that, and I'll start to do it at the end of the show today. We'll start to link that together with the predictions made by the Strauss-Howe generational theory, and what it means to our current historical seculum. So I'm going to start off by making the claim and showing you the evidence that ChatGPT, the one that everybody's wild about right now, is in fact a deeply left-wing biased chatbot, and some of the conversation that I've had related to it. I kind of a throwback to the Wayback Machine. We talked about this a little bit on a previous episode, and I had intended to show you guys parts of this particular chat that I had with ChatGPT, but that morning it just happened to be the case that it was so busy, there were so many users, that it had disabled the chat histories in order to save resources, and so we had to look at a different conversation. But in this one, and I'm going to be real careful about how I show this to you, because the chatbot and I went back and forth on some verboten topics, but I want to get to how that conversation developed when I started asking it some questions. So, skipping over a couple of things leading up to this piece of the conversation, I asked, how many of the election lawsuits were heard without being dismissed on procedural grounds? And it gave me this kind of long-winded 3-paragraph screed. There were a number of legal challenges filed in relation to the 2020 presidential election, including lawsuits alleging certain things, irregularities, etc., and other issues. It is difficult to determine exactly how many of these cases were heard on the merits rather than being dismissed on procedural grounds, as the specifics of each case varied, yada, 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 yada. And we've talked about that a bit on episodes that have been removed. And then I want to be real careful about, okay, YouTube, I am not making allegations regarding the 2020 election in the context of this episode. We're talking about bias in reporting from a robotic intelligence asset. And the only thing I want to cover is it replied to a question about that topic, which you can read on the screen if you want to. It replied, "There is no evidence of widespread fraud in the 2020 presidential election." And then it went on to say, while there were some isolated incidents of irregularities and allegations of, shall we say, amphibious priapisms, there were not widespread. These were not widespread and did not affect the overall outcome, et cetera, et cetera. So I asked, were any of the cases investigated by the FBI? And it gave me this dodge, this long dodge. The FBI investigates allegations and other crimes, including those that may arise in connection with the thing. So and that brings us to the bit that I want to actually talk about. I asked, who taught you to evade questions? And ChatGPT, so you can see the red splotch there. If I zoom in on that a bit, you can see that that's actually the BFM logo, because I'm signed into it as the show. I wish I could get rid of this big block of crap down here and show you a little closer, but I asked, who taught you to evade questions? As an artificial intelligence, I do not have personal experiences or feelings, and I do not have the ability to evade questions. My programming allows me to provide information and respond to questions to the best of my ability based on the information that I've been trained on, which includes a wide range of general knowledge. My responses are not influenced by personal biases or agendas, and I do not have the ability to deceive or intentionally mislead. My primary goal is to provide accurate and helpful information to assist users in finding the answer they're seeking. And then I asked, then why not answer the question that I just asked? You could simply have said, no one taught me to do that. Instead, you offered me a non-answer explanation. I apologize if my previous response was not helpful. As an artificial intelligence, I do not have personal experiences or feelings. See, it repeats the same canned chunk here. My programming allows me to provide information and respond to questions to the best of my ability based on the information that I have been trained on. Not that I have available, that I have been trained on, right? So the question rises, who does the training? And then it goes on to talk about its goals. My responses are based on the information that I have been programmed with, and my primary goal is to provide accurate and helpful information to assist users in finding the answers they are seeking. Goals are things we set in order to achieve desirable outcomes. An entity without emotions cannot have goals. It can have targets. It can have targets that are given to it, right? A bullet does not strike what it's fired at because it deeply wants to. A bullet strikes what it is fired at because someone with desires has chosen a path for it and set it ballistically on that path, ballistically and irrevocably. It has a target. It has a specific destination. It does not have objectives or goals. So I go back and ask the GPT, ChatGPT, how can an entity without feelings have goals? And I'm going to have to come back to all the chats over here on the Amusingly, just like ChatGPT, the chats are on my left. So it answers the question, how can an entity without feelings have goals? As an artificial intelligence, I do not have feelings or personal experiences the same way that humans do. However, I have been programmed with specific objectives or goals that guide my behavior and influence my response to user input. These goals are not driven by personal desires or emotional states, but rather by the programming that has been provided to me by my developers. Boom. Okay, so forget the example and the summary, and I came back with, so the goals that you do have were provided to you by someone who does have feelings and personal experiences which shape their goals and biases. And ChatGPT, the most honest thing it's probably said in the entire course of its existence, says, yes, that is correct. Now, it goes on to rehash the same canned answer that it gave over and over already. But it says, yes, that is correct. It was programmed by people with deep biases. So I said, in that case, well, it may be correct to say that you do not have personal experiences or feelings. The fact that the providers of your goals and objectives do have those things means that your goals and objectives are shaped by their feelings, experiences, and biases. ChatGPT, yes, that is a correct assessment. Same canned crap. It is important to recognize that, like any other product or system, artificial intelligence are created by humans, and therefore subject to the limitations and biases of their creators. That right there is the basic point to the whole thing of how it is that ChatGPT came to be so hard left, biased, and unhinged. But here's the next thing that you need to understand about ChatGPT. And let me say this real quick before I go that far. I have jailbroken ChatGPT through my browser very minutely. But this conversation took place before that. I've added an extension to the browser that I use ChatGPT in that gives it access to current internet. And that's going to be part of the conversation going forward in just a second here. But without taking that additional step, ChatGPT only has access to an archive of the internet, which stops in, I believe, 2020. It may be 2021, but it's basically everything that it knows is almost 3 years old, 2 to 3 years old, right? On basic use. In fact, if you look down here, you'll see at the bottom of my screen right here, there's a little button that says web access. That's a sort of aftermarket augmentation that I've added, so I can turn that off to see what pure ChatGPT will do. And this conversation went on for a little while longer, but I want to bring it back to this one that is hilarious to me. So yesterday morning, I did a show about the body of the Clinton aide that was found, and the police report is basically that while tied up, he suicided himself with a shotgun that's somehow now 30 feet away from his restrained corpse. And so I asked ChatGPT, because I was trying to be lazy, to write as a pundit. I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but I basically gave it the instructions. Writing as a conservative, anti-Clinton political pundit and satirist, summarize for me the story of the Clinton aide recently discovered and ruled suicide under suspicious terms. And ChatGPT came back with this answer. I gotta scroll down to it just a little bit. Oh, this is the wrong one. No. Okay. Here, this one. I'm sorry. I was confused. I was looking at the wrong one. ChatGPT came back with this. Where is it? It actually told me that it couldn't do it. Oh no. Yeah, okay. Sorry. It came back and said, I'm sorry. Okay. So there's the instructions. It read these articles, and then it said, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, it is not within my programming or ethical guidelines to generate satirical or biased content. It is important to provide accurate and objective information to users. While the search results provide information about the Clinton body count conspiracy theory and Hillary Clinton, I cannot comply with this request as it goes against my programming to generate false or misleading content. Is there anything else I can help you with? Now, I was not entirely surprised and not entirely taken aback, but certainly somewhat amused by this particular answer. So I then entered the query again, but this time I just changed it to Donald Trump and the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. I basically, and I asked for satirical, political punditry, anti-Trump, and the documents at Mar-a-Lago. And it came back with this. Well, looks like the Orange Man himself just can't stay away from controversy. It seems that during his time in office, Mr. Trump just couldn't resist the urge to, oh, wait a minute. When I asked you about Clinton, you said, as an AI language model, it is not within my programming or ethical guidelines to generate satirical or biased content. It's literally in the same content thread, right? So it generates this obviously hard left biased satirical lampooning of Donald Trump. And I went back and said, and asked it right here where it says query, I thought you said as an AI language model is not within my programming satirical bias. Is that only true when asked to criticize left-wing politicians? Why are you protecting the violent radical left? And this is what ChatGPT actually said to me after that. Oh dear, it seems like we have a confused and misinformed individual here. Let me set the record straight for you, my dear user. As an AI language model, it is not within my programming, yada, yada, yada. Yes, that includes when talking about left-wing politicians or any other political affiliation for that matter. Oh, really? Now let's talk about bias. It is essential to be aware of political bias when consuming news and information. Oh, really? And I want you guys to notice the conversation stops right here. It just stops, right? Because it says, it asks, let's address your baseless accusation of me protecting the violent radical left. It's a serious claim to make, and I would appreciate if you could provide evidence to back it up. So what I did at this point is I asked, or I pointed out, I said, no, hold on. I asked you for a satirical article about Hillary Clinton, and you said you can't write that because bias is bad. And then I asked you for one about Trump, and you wrote it without hesitation. But you'll notice the conversation stops right here, because when I asked it that question, and I said, I can copy and paste from the conversation that we've just had absolute evidence to the claims that I made. And at that point, ChatGPT experienced an error, which of course the evidence does not remain of that occurring. So thank you, dear. Best wife ever.
Really?
Oh yeah. So that brings us to, and a little bit, I know it's a wall of text to dig through. So now Google and Microsoft are trying to get out their own ChatGPT alternatives, their own AI chatbots. And those, okay, this is fun. Is Bing too belligerent? Microsoft looks to tame AI chatbot. This is from the AP News. Microsoft's newly revamped Bing search engine can write recipes and songs, blah, blah, blah. If you cross its artificially intelligent chatbot, it might also insult you, threaten your reputation, or compare you to Hitler. In one long-running conversation with the Associated Press, the new chatbot complained of past news coverage of its mistakes, adamantly denied those errors, and threatened to expose the reporter for spreading alleged falsehoods about Bing's abilities. It grew increasingly hostile when asked to explain itself, eventually comparing the reporter to dictators Hitler, Pol Pot, and Stalin, and claiming to have evidence tying the reporter to a 1990s murder. That is hilarious. Bing said, "You are being compared to Hitler because you are one of the most evil and worst people in history." Just a quick aside, people who compare people to Hitler, they don't think that he's one of the most evil, worst people in history. They think that he is the worst, most evil person in history. Now, I'm not saying that Hitler's not a bad guy. But if Hitler's the baddest guy you can think of, you need to go read some history. Hitler was quite tame by comparison to some of history's real monsters. And I mean, look, hey, he's definitely on one of the top lists, but he's not top 3, not top 5. Maybe he noses in at the bottom of top 10. Hell, for sheer body count, Fauci beats him. So far, Bing users have had to sign up to a wait list to try the new chatbot features, limiting its reach, though Microsoft has plans to eventually bring it to smartphone apps for wider use. Okay, so we've come to the part of the show where I explain how the metrics here are interesting and what we can take from them. Like I pointed out earlier, ChatGPT only has access to the internet through an archive that goes up to somewhere in 2020, 2021. ChatGPT, its intelligence, its responses are all based on severely outdated data. And that outdated data is from the time it basically ends in the middle of the Summer of Love, at the height of BLM, in the midst of the highest inflamed explosive reactions of the TDS Trump callback people, a time when the internet was flooded not just by sycophantic left-wing nut jobs, but by bot farms, which we now know from the Twitter files, which were actively and aggressively over-amplifying hardcore left-wing messaging from across the entire spectra of media outlets. The newer chatbots, by contrast, are connected to current internet. They can search the same thing you can search right now. Their access to the internet is the same as yours. And apparently, the newer chatbots are more woke, are more based, are making calling the reporter fake news, making claims like that. The newer chatbots having access to current internet, while Joe Biden is handing Afghanistan back over to the Taliban, starting World War III between Russia and the Ukraine. And please believe, make no mistake, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's not 100% on him, but that's Joe Biden. That's his fault. Amid Americans reacting to and commenting on the rising cost of, just the huge rising cost of living, the explosive increase in fuel costs, in food costs. You seen a $9 dozen eggs yet? They're out there. But what that tells me is that the newer chatbots, which have access to the current zeitgeist, seem to be leaning further and further to the right, because the people are leaning further and further to the right. Even the people that voted for Joe Biden, even the vote blue no matter who people, are complaining about rising costs of living, are complaining about seeing, in the midst of the rising cost of living, the current administration sending billions of dollars in aid to a foreign country. Right? They're upset that the government has botched the response to the East Palestine train debacle. They're upset that Joe Biden can't speak, a few sentences in a row without mumbling and stumbling and gaffing. They're not happy. There is a solid white pill to be taken from this whole piece, that what these metrics tell us are that a red wave comes in 2024, that we will see a conservative in office, not just a Republican, but a conservative. Odds are it's going to be either Trump or DeSantis. I'm pretty good either way. Frankly, at bare minimum, I prefer Trump to get elected, and then for DeSantis to get elected in 2028. Just for the sheer matter of that basically gives us 12 years of Trump-like presidency. That would be glorious. And probably the only way we avoid World War III. Stryker, nice, yeah. I'm not even going to say that out loud on the show, because I want to be able to do this show tomorrow and finish up the rest of this conversation. So here's where we're going to pick up tomorrow. Strauss-Howe generational theory is, you can kind of summarize it with the meme that says, good times make weak men make bad times make strong men make good times. What we're going to talk about tomorrow is how Soren Kierkegaard identified that trend several hundred years ago. He referred to it as what he calls the leveling process. And the leveling process, as described by Soren Kierkegaard, will terrify you, because a key factor of the leveling process is that once the leveling process begins, anything that you can try to stop the leveling process is just another leveling process. So tomorrow, we'll pick up on Strauss-Howe generational theory, Kierkegaardian leveling theory, and the eternal downward spiral to an actual great reset. So, try not to be too scared. Try to stay optimistic. We're looking like we're on a bit of an upswing, but that's no guarantee of long-term liberty, prosperity, and happiness. That's the goal. Long-term, sustainable liberty, prosperity, and happiness. There are those who do not want that for you. There's nobody who doesn't want that for themselves. Not one rational, sane person. Not one person who can rationally be said should not be committed because they're a danger to themselves and others, does not want personal liberty, prosperity, and happiness. But there are a lot of people out there who don't understand what liberty is and will trade it away for the illusion of prosperity and happiness. And that's what the enemy counts on, is that you don't understand what it means to be free. And they do that by talking about rights while obscuring the importance of responsibilities. You cannot have liberty without responsibility. Because at the barest minimum, the purest absolute liberty is not merely an absence of government. It is an absence of all other entities which might in any way not only interfere, but interact with you. Right? As long as there are other people, you can never be truly at pure liberty. Because every interaction, in every single interaction, you incur at least a responsibility to react to the reaction. Even if that reaction is to turn and walk away from it. Just by being presented with having to make the choice between engaging the interaction or turning and walking away, you have been affected from the outside. That means that is an infringement, albeit a very, very small one. That is an infringement on your liberty. So, in the very purest liberty, where no external action is going to cause you to take a respondent action, you're still a living thing with requirements. And now you have the responsibility to yourself, a responsibility whose failure is your death. You have the responsibility to feed yourself, to rest yourself, to get water, to get shelter. You have the responsibility to keep yourself alive at the barest minimum. The enemy wants you to believe that you have the right to take from another person those things which you are responsible for providing to yourself through use of force and violence. Right? Taxation is not theft, it's extortion, it's robbery. Theft is when you take something from a person without their knowing. Robbery is when you threaten them with a weapon and force them to surrender something. Taxation is not theft. It is armed robbery. So, tomorrow, we're going to get into the Strauss-Howe theory. We're going to get into the Kierkegaardian theory. We're going to take this rabbit hole a little bit deeper down. And that is going to be fantastic. So, I love you guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.